Hello, friends. We're going to get started in just a minute. I need to go fetch my coffee off of the Keurig, and we will dive in once I've got a few things squared away. Back to Twitch. Go to create our dashboard. The Scream Manager. Pop out the chat. Pop out the quick actions. Because I am going to try to remember to raid into my wife's show when she starts it at 2, or when I wrap up this stream. Just get my screen, all of my windows laid out, all of that stuff. Post the project, pin, manual, away control box. Okay, I'll be right back in a second. I gotta go get my coffee. 2 seconds, maybe 5, maybe a couple more. So we do need to await devdad.fetch coffee. And something I've just started looking into is the ability to send messages from an async method that sends sort of progress or update messages or what have you to whatever is awaiting that long-running task. Excuse me, because when we're doing data access inside the application, sometimes we have to wait for the database to wake up or whatever, and we'll sort of get some transient exceptions because the database hasn't come online yet, or it's still resuming, or whatever. And I want to be able to say to the user, like, first off, I need to put up a, hey, I'm working on it screen. And then let's say the database isn't awake. I know that's a condition that can happen. So I want to be able to handle that by saying, okay, so if we're getting connection errors or whatever, wait 5 seconds, hit it again. If it comes back with the same thing, wait another 10 seconds, hit it again. But each time we come back to the code that's calling out to the component that's encountering the error, I want to send a ping back to the UI that says, hey, the database is being a little slow to wake up. I'm working on it. We're gonna try again a couple of times, and if it doesn't happen, we're gonna call Rob, but it'll come back eventually, I hope. So those are the kind of things that I want to think about building in. And there used to be a library called, or there is a library called Poly, P-O-L-L-Y, where you can set up these resilience policies. But I just saw an article earlier today that with dotNet 8, which is what we're using to build this, they've actually built in Microsoft.extensions.resilience library that contains a lot of the goodies that Poly has. So we'll be able to hopefully start setting up some of these resilience policies within our application. That's a couple of days down the road, I expect. But it's definitely something that is going to happen before I open up to the first cohort of users for the Game Tools app. Today, this afternoon rather, I want to focus on getting the authorization in place for the different pages and components. So to do that, we're going to use something called policies. And we've got the Authentication State Provider Service, and that authentication and authorization. I suppose we should probably talk about those two things. In web development, around user stuff, we've got two concepts when it comes to security. And I'm just waiting for PowerPoint to show up for me. I'll pull it over here because I want to do a real quick little sketch. And we can throw the designer away. We don't need that. We can throw this, and we can throw this away. And within the sphere of web app security, edit text, web app security. And this applies to whether we're dealing with a website application or really any kind of system where different users have different permissions based on who they are. So within web app security, we've got two primary concepts. We've got and let's change the background color on this guy to a slightly lighter blue. We're going to copy and paste. Oh, this is a cute little robot looking dude. Just a silly little guy. And on both of these, I need to set the text fill to black. But now I want to say we have principles, fancy word for users. And then we have resources, things that in our app that are protectable. Probably not a word, whatever. So we've got these two primary concepts. And our web app security is kind of what's responsible for making sure that for protected resources, and those resources could be pages, they could be different features that the application provides, it could be specific pieces of data or whatever. Those are all resources. And we want to make sure that those resources are only available to those principals that should have access to those specific resources. So I'm actually going to increase the amount of space between these two silly little guys. And so we've got a couple of concepts at play here. And let's pull this guy right out here so he's spaced approximately the same. All right. So we need our rectangle. And we want to set the shape fill on that guy. Let's go with a different color. And let's say orange. That orange is a little harsh. Let's go a little darker on that. Nah. Let's go with a green. I like that. That'll work. So we've got that. And we've got this. Here we go. Good enough. And I want to set the text fill on that to black as well. So within the concept of application security, we've got authentication, AuthN. All right. And then we've also got authorization, AuthZ, are the two terms that are used to kind of shorten those, because those are big mouthful words, and when you're talking fast and going through concepts and everything like that, it can be a mouthful to spit out the entire word. So we've got AuthN and AuthZ. All right. And then where a lot of people that don't deal with this stuff on an everyday or even frequent basis get hung up are the difference between these two terms, because they're both involved in application security, but they've got the two concepts have two very different roles when it comes to securing an application and securing the resources within that application. Now, before we can determine what resources a user has or a user can access within the context of an application or a system, we need to know who they are. And that is the job of authentication. Who are you? All right, so that's identifies, and let's say verifiably identifies the user of the application. Yeah, I typically stream twice a day, script. Um, I stream at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and then again at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, usually during the typical North American work week, Monday through Friday. Now, authentication is basically who are you? Can I see some ID? Kind of thing. And normally, this stuff, especially the verification of identity, is not necessarily handled by our application itself. Sometimes, like you'll get old school web forms apps or what have you that have a user store like in the database, and it stores the username and their hashed password, hopefully their hashed password, and all of that stuff. But more modern applications, and I really prefer to externalize the authentication portions of user sign in, because I don't want to be responsible for the code that protects my users' identities. I'm going to leave that to, say, in my case, Microsoft. I've got a Entra B2C tenant running up in Azure that's going to control identifying users as they come into my application and then verifying those users' identities for me. And Microsoft has thousands of people working for me. I'm pretty smart, but I personally am not as smart as all of the people working at Microsoft on this stuff combined. So I'm going to use their services, especially because my first 50,000 monthly users are free. So I'll move authentication off to Microsoft's stuff. Authorization is, I know who you are. Have you got your ticket to the show? Authorization is like the ticket taker at a theater. So think in terms of going out to a club to see a band you like. Now, the big burly guy that stands outside checking people's IDs to make sure they're old enough to get in, he's authentication. He's also kind of in charge of, not letting people that are known troublemakers in, stuff like that. But he's primarily there to make sure that the only people that can get into the building are the ones that are allowed to be there. And in order to enter the building, you have to have a verifiable ID, so a driver's license, state identification of some sort, whatever, doesn't matter. Authorization is the person at the ticket booth who says, "Can I see your ticket?" or "Is your name on the will call or prepaid online list," or what have you. So it's basically, I know who you are. Have you got your ticket to the show? You have general admission. So stay out of the VIP section. So those are examples of authorization. And normally, like outside the VIP section or, the backstage area or what have you, there's somebody else who's stationed there to make sure that the people trying to get into the backstage area or the VIP section of the club or what have you are allowed to enter those parts of the club. And that's authorization. So sometimes you'll have the application itself responsible for holding the lists of who is authorized for what. Sometimes you've got other schemes for that. If you go to a hotel and they've got like a diamond membership or whatever, and there's special parking for diamond members, the hotel chain will have that data stored somewhere, and they can just check you in and say, "Oh, yeah, diamond member, good. Put this colored ticket in the dash of your car and you won't get towed." Stuff like that. Other times, the authorization information might get delegated out to the authentication. So the guy at the door who's checking IDs would give you a colored bracelet based off of, looking up your name on a list. And if you're on a certain part of the list, you get a gold bracelet. If you're on a different part of the list, you get a silver bracelet. If you're not on any of the lists, but you're still allowed in because, you pass the other checks, you'll get like the plain boring white bracelet, for, lack of a better metaphor. So sometimes the authentication system will have the information used to inform the authorization handlers. And that's what I'm going to do with this application. I'm going to use Microsoft Entra's security groups, or the Microsoft Entra groups feature, to create groups that describe something about each of the users. And then as users, I'm going to have a group for known users, which anybody that logs in and sets up an account is going to have, and it's going to let them into certain parts of the application. And then I'm going to have another group called paid users, which lets them push the AI buttons and stuff like that, the features that actually cost me money to execute. Now, to implement those, I need to set up authorization policies. I need a way to map individual memberships to the sections of the application that require membership in whichever group. So let's see what's involved there. For this, I've brought up a couple of articles on Microsoft Learn, and there's first and foremost is ASP.NET Core Blazor Authentication and Authorization, And then there's another one on claims-based authorization and ASP.NET Core. Let's go with Blazor for now. So I've got anti-forgery support, and I'm pretty sure I've got all that stuff set up already. And it automatically happens when I say add Razor components in the program CS. So that's cool. And then I've got use anti-forgery middleware. It's already in place, so I'm protected against cross-site request forgery and stuff like that. It makes it a lot easier for the bad guys to kind of sneak their way in or kind of bird dog behind an authorized user or put themselves in the pocket of an authorized user and get access to the protected parts of my system. Foreign data to the server encoded as blah, 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 yeah. And those are the only valid form encoding types. Not important for now, will become important later this week, early next week. So authentication, we've got server-side Blazor authentication. That's already set up. I've got my context accessor out in my Razor components. So that's good. It's a cascading parameter, only in statically rendered root components. So I'm not going to mess with that. Server-side Blazor apps live in server memory. Multiple app sessions are hosted within the same process. Starts the circuit with its own dependency injection container. Scope, yeah. Stateful singleton services in Blazor apps if they're specifically designed for it. Okay, I'm trying to avoid using stateful singleton services. I might implement a singleton memory cache at some point if I decide I need it. Client-side Blazor authentication, authenticator state provider. Okay, so use the AuthorizeView component. Cool, we've got an example of that in the source code. The component isn't notified automatically if the underlying authentication state data changes. Okay, that's good to know. Page claims principal data. If claims.any, claim type, claim value, blah, blah, blah. I've actually got something very much like this already running in the Blazor app itself. And I can show you it in just a second, as soon as it comes up. Another piece of tech debt that I identified earlier this morning is right now the authentication system is reading in from app settings, and the environment variables that I'm using up in Azure to hold those settings are named differently from the format that's required for using the configuration object binding. So /user-info. This is just sort of a throwaway page that I added last week. So we could see that I am in the role AppGM Tools paid users and AppGM Tools users. So that's all cool. Now I need a way to turn those role memberships into actual permission policies that I can decorate my other Razor pages with. So let's take a look at that article. Claims principal claims, returns the user's claims for display in the UI. Yeah. Expose the authentication state as a cascading parameter. I don't need to necessarily worry about that. Not yet, anyway. Create a Blazor app from one of the Blazor project templates with authentication enabled. Authorize route view. The call to add cascading authentication state shown in the following example. Authorize route view, route data. default layout type of layout.main layout, blah, blah, blah. Register cascading, authentication state. That's done in my add appsec. And then add authorization core. I'm not worried about that because I'm not doing Blazor client side yet. Excuse me. Is in a role, has a claim, a policy is satisfied. Okay. So, for laughs, I wonder if there are some things I can access here while it's running in real time. So let's bring the, oh, no, did I stop it? I did. Okay. So let's sign in again. And I'll just let it sign in as me. And we'll go to user info and hit the breakpoint. Boop. Good. Now, where's my immediate window? Here it is. And I'm going to pull this out, add it to that view because that's annoying. All right. So print user not equal to null. Good. User dot is in role. And I believe it's, oh gosh. I'm going to just let it continue for now. I got to grab one of these things. So I'm going to grab that, copy it into my clipboard, refresh, hit my breakpoint, and interrogate user.isInRole. Okay, good. And let's say user.isInRole Dragon Slayers, because I don't have a role called Dragon Slayers. It doesn't exist, so user is not in that role. That's fantastic. User.isInRole, paste, and go paid users. Great. Now, user.identity.claims. User.claims. Do we have that? Okay, so we have system security claims, claims principal, and good. Good. So we obviously have a claims principal. We can probably get that information by invoking user.getType.name. And it is, in fact, a claims principal. Good. Now, from that, I think there is a way. Let's come down here. AuthorizeView. So that's that. Also supply different content for display if the user isn't authorized with a combination of the authorized and non-authorized parameters. So that's all fine and good. I'm actually using that in the nav menu component. Client-side markup and methods. Hey, what's up, C-Films? Doing okay, man. Protected from view and execution of the rendered UI, blah, blah, blah. Role-based and policy-based authorization. Here we go. So I can say AuthorizeView for roles, admin, super user, AuthorizeView roles, admin only, things like that. Or we can define policies. AuthorizeView policy over 21. To handle the case where the user should satisfy one of several policies, create a policy that confirms what the user satisfies other policies. Okay, so in order to implement this stuff, I need to, we'll just let the app continue. Yeah. And I'm going to stop execution. Now, outside of our components, we've got middleware, add a new class called Authorization Policies. Authorization policy. Boom. Public. Static class. Policies. Now, we're going to externalize that class because I don't want to have to refer to that via long form dot notation every time I want to use it. So, add class app policies. It's going to be static and public const string known users equals known users. Public const string paid users equals paid users. Public const string app admins equals admins. No, I'm not going to add the admin stuff yet. I'll mess around with that stuff. So right now we've got exactly 2 application policies that we are going to use for securing our stuff. Public const string public access equals public access. So, in order to declare policies, content displayed during async authentication, authorize attribute, via the Blazor router, authorization is only performed as an aspect of routing and not for child components rendered within a page. Okay, I'll have to use the AuthorizeView outside of that. Excuse me. Okay. Authenticated users are unauthorized, not authorized, resource authorization, blah, 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 blah. All right, now we need to get into creating policies and defining policies. And where is a code sample for that? Adding claims checks. Policy.require claim. Okay. So let's save all of this stuff. And we're just going to add some dummy code in here. And let's see the most appropriate place to do that stuff. Add Razor components, add interactive server components, add interactive WebAssembly components. Excuse me. We're not doing controllers with views, but it looks like I want to do this in the configure app sec. So come down to the definition. We've added our claims transformation, builder.services.add authentication. So this is defining all of that stuff. Add controllers with views, add Microsoft Identity UI, and let's come down here and go builder.services.add authorization options. Bonk. Come out to the end of the line. And I gotta add the wiggly braces. Back that up like so. And say options.add policy. And let's get rid of all of that IntelliSense stuff. App policies. And I got to spell it right. Dot known users, comma, new line, policy. And here's where we're getting into some FAFO. So I know there's a policy.require claim, but is there a policy called require role? And there is. And app policies, and I'm going to preface this with rename Paul. I'm going to copy that, paste it on both of those. Public const string role known user equals one thing. Public const string role underscore paid user equals another thing. And for that, I'm going to have to go to Entra. So bear with me for just a minute. Here's this. I can come back out here and come over here. I don't want to look at the user flows. Users. User type member. I actually want to go home. And let's look over here. And I gotta pull this off to another screen while I log in, so I don't show my underpants on the internet. And I should be able to find my groups. Security, authentication methods, conditional access, nope. How about groups? Do we have groups anywhere? Roles and administrators? Yoo-hoo! Nope. Users, screw it. We'll look at users. And I'll just load up this user. Because I know I have all of the groups that I need to worry about, and there's the strings right there. So our known user role is going to be app.gmtools, sorry, not dot, but dash users. And our paid user role is going to be called app-gmtools-paid-users. Let's save that. Now, why did I do this? Because I'm likely going to need to have access to those string values in more than a few places throughout the application, and when they change, because I'm not particularly in love with these AD group names. I might change them, but I probably won't, but I might. But I don't want to have to remember this string every time I need to use it. So I've added it to my app policies, and I'm going to rename this to AuthZ constants. Yes, please rename everything. And AuthZ constants holds non-sensitive values as named constants, so I don't have to remember them. I'm using prefixes to categorize these constants. Poll underscore equals the constant that has to do with policies. Role underscore, equals a constant that defines a role name. Save. So let's come back over to authorization. Nope, not authorization policy, but program. So require role, and this gets a POL underscore, known users. This uses authz constants dot role underscore known user. Cool. Let's add another policy. Options dot add policy authz constants Ha! That's so weird, Rev. No worries, buddy. I'm glad you're engaged enough to want to come and hang out consistently. So auth constants dot pol underscore paid users. So that's the name of the policy. And we'll define it as policy.require role. And we'll use auth constants again. Dot role underscore paid user. And see how I don't have to remember any of those values? Very mindful. Very kind to an old man brain like my own. Not terribly demure. And finally, do I need to define options? Oops. Dot add policy auth z constants dot pol underscore public access policy is policy dot allow. Is there an allow anonymous? Require authenticated user, require scope or app permission, build, combine, require scope. Okay. We're going to have to look something up because there's like this default policy nonsense and all of that stuff. Use authorization, authorize policy, blah, 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 authorize policy, require claim with values, add a generic claim check, multiple policy evaluation. We can stack them, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. All right. Let's not monkey with that. Content displayed during async. Authorize policy. Policy, you satisfy the over 21 and lives in California policies. Okay. So let's play with this. Let's play with it a little bit. Public access. Before we do that, Apple T .NET policy authorization explicit allow anonymous policy. Allows anyone, as its name implies, but also allows authorization. That's what your handler is called. Okay. Users simple authorization, set a global authorization policies using default policies applied when you specify that authorization is required, but doesn't specify a policy to apply. I don't necessarily want to use allow anonymous. Fail secure, middleware, check allow anonymous, blah, 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 blah. Authorization policy builder, allow anonymous. Based on policy. Admin needs to approve the preview data. Yeah. Okay, so I could just do require assertion context is true, which feels really, really silly and hacky. Controller base. Ew. I'm not using controllers either. Challenging the authorization for an authorized user because that search got me here. Okay. Let's just try nothing. Let's just tear that out completely. Bonk. So let's come over to, I may not even need this. In fact, it's empty. Oh no. I know what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to pull this crap up into there so that it's more easily accessible and stuff like that. In fact, I'm probably going to do an authentication policy file for all of this crap too. Like all of this, especially this rubbish. And I noticed last night that it's declaring all these variables and then doing exactly nothing with them. That I can tell. So let's go into our temp user. We've got our authorized view, not authorized. I'm going to change this to I don't know you. That's my purse. Now, authorized in here, I am going to say, instead of all this nonsense, create a policy for authorized view that confirms that the user satisfies several other policies. Nest the policies in multiple authorized view components. Authorized. And policy equals, and instead of passing the string, I'm going to go authz constants. I was going to complain about that. Dot at using game tools dot Blazor client dot middleware authz constants dot pol. You're gonna give me some goodies, please, please, please. Known users. Is it gonna work? Ah. So inside the authorized, I need to do this a little bit differently. Right here, with just a naked authorized view, it's looking for somebody who's been authenticated. And if they're not authenticated, then I don't know you, that's my purse. If they are, we're going to nest authorized view policy equals, instead of that, I'm going to use authz constants dot pol known users. There we go. Control X. And then inside here, I'm going to nest. Well, let's just test this stuff first before I start creating a big honkin' nesting hierarchy and all that madness. Let's just see what's what. And this may go down in flames. Oh yeah, there are build errors. Child content of component authorized view uses the same parameter name context as enclosing authorized blah 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 blah. Child content context equals another name. What? Even? That's goofy. What if I rip that out? H3. Hello, not stranger. Try that. And go. Oh, bite me. Build solution. Okay. Code. Uses the same parameter name context as enclosing child content element authorized. And let's copy that. Open a new notepad, paste. Because that is a goofy looking error message and doesn't really give me a whole lot of information. Oh, looks like Safari's about to lose its little mind. Oh yeah, it ain't gonna like that. So let's try Edge. Paste and search. Okay, both AuthorizeView and edit form have a child content which they pass a value to using register fragment T. Yeah. It's the GitHub thing, fluent edit form if using AuthorizeView. GitHub. Use the same parameter name context. What's this nonsense? Oh, go away. Yes, just give me the damn cookies. No, I'm not signing in. All right. Wow, Safari's really lost his little mind. But I can't quit it because if I do, it might do horrible things to my stream. So I've got system component model data annotations. Yeah. AuthorizeView authorized. Boogity boo. Have a child content which they pass a value to using render fragment T. By default, this value is called context. However, due to this nesting of the value, context is ambiguous. Declare a different name for the context instead of the default of context. You can do so using context equals new context name. Okay. That seems a little weird and arbitrary. Excuse me. But what the heck? So, AuthorizeView, context name equals AuthN CTX. Save it and build. Let's just rebuild the whole darn thing. Sometimes dotNet is silly. And I still might run into issues with that policy, trying to use a constant value. Child content element, child context of component AuthorizeView, context as enclosing child. Oh, it's not context name, it's context. All right. So, let's see if that gives us any goodies. The application's spinning up. That's good. So we'll sign in as me. What the heck? Why not? Here we go. I'm signed in. And let's go to user info and see if it's able to read my policy. We hit a breakpoint. Doesn't look like it. Does not appear to look like it. So that's stinky. Let's try refreshing. That doesn't really help me a lot at all. So can we drop a breakpoint here? Context.user is claims principal. Name, blah, blah, blah. I might have to grab this string value. And I'm going to do that just purely for science. Don't like it, but we're going to try it. If I have to use magic strings for that stuff, I'm going to be really, really disappointed. And user info. Hello, no stranger. Okay, so we got past that. Good. Now, instead of doing things this way, what if I pull this to here? All right, not authorized. Publicly available stuff here. Only logged in users in the app users group should see this. And I'm going to move this up to here. Policy equals, and it looks like I have to use the magic strings, which is gross. That's really, really gross. Paid users. And authorized. Not authorized. I'm going to put the not authorized above the authorized content. Tease the free user about the stuff they can't do. This would be where I'd put the Use AI button. Not what? BR. What the flip are you even doing? Yeah, the auto, yeah. I really think IntelliCode is just Clippy in disguise. Hello, paid user. Here's that AI button. Thanks for feeding me. All right, just for laughs, let's spin this puppy up and see what happens. Hello there. Let's go to user info. Dash info. Cool. And let's load her up. Hello, paid user. Here's that AI button. Thanks for feeding me. Great. Now I'm going to log out and go back to user-info. And it's just the publicly available stuff. Great. Now I'm going to sign in as Rob at that developer dad, who is an app user, but is not a paid user. User-info. I really don't like this flash of nonsense, but that definitely seems to be doing what I need it to do. So, excuse me, when it's first loading the user info page and it's running the policy checks, it goes to empty white screen, executes some kind of code, and then comes back and renders out the content. And I don't like it. I'd like to know what's happening. I think what I need to do is come into come down here. Go to that page with a request and then respond with it being valid in your token. Yeah-ish. I'm going to drop a breakpoint here. We're going to navigate. Okay, so it doesn't happen there. It doesn't happen when I hit the NPC. But user info. Actually, that's a mighty fine idea, Rev. And we're hitting the transform async on this page. And we're hitting it a bunch of frickin' times. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that one. We'll go home. User-info. Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Holy smokes. That was 7. Yeah. Yeah, why is it doing all of that stuff? This is an async, right? Okay, it is. God, I hope it's not getting called for each claim it's processing, because I'm just doing a roll check. Hmm. Hmm. Add claim, so it's doing all that stuff. I am going to stop the app, and because I know that graph call, that takes a while. So I'm going to new identity dot add claim. It's going to be a new claim. And I'm not going to use a binary reader or any of that nonsense. Type roles added. Value gets true. Now, principal.clone. If principal dot has claim, try get claim. Nope. Has claim. No. Claims. Roles added. New. Dot any c dot type equals roles added, and also c dot value equals true. Return principal. Let's try that. We'll just short circuit right out of the son of a gun. So I don't care that it's being called 6 times. I care that it's doing work that's already been done all those times. So clone is authenticated, claims 10. Let's take a look. Roles added is true, good. Engage. I'm going to come back out here. Take a look at this. We are currently signed in as DevDad. Yep. So let's go to user info, user-info, and see if that improves our performance at all. So there's that. And I want to take a look at this evaluation as well. So continue. All right, so I suspect that when I do this claims transformation, it needs to write the identity back to the client, because that's ridiculous. And that's something that I noticed when I was working in the authentication code, is it didn't seem to be storing any kind of authentication token or sending it down to the client or anything like that. And that feels a little goofy to me. So Rev, I'm going to take your advice, and we're going to maximize this. Well, first off, let's see if it's actually trying to hit this crap on a straight refresh. The answer is yes. So let's continue. And now I'm going to maximize. Come on. Get big. And I need developer tools along the bottom. And do we have a requests log? Here's network. And I'm going to hit Control R. All right, game tool, blah, blah, blah. So it's asking for all that nonsense. But let's see here. Font awesome, min CSS, bootstrap, min CSS. Why is it bringing all of this crap back on every request? All of that stuff really ought to be. Okay, so that's fulfilled by the browser memory cache. Discord for auth on a Blazor app. Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Yep. Blazor web.js. Negotiate request URL. We got a 200. We got a 101, but that's a WebSocket connection. We're loading a bunch of styles. Negotiate, WebSockets, all that stuff. So what's the deal with, yeah, that doesn't really tell me a whole lot. $19 requests, yeah, whatever, that's just SVGs. It's all that stuff. Why in the name of God is it making 6 stops in that claims transformation thing? And it feels like it's rereading the auth ticket every darn time. So that is some homework for me to do. To figure out how to write those transformed claims back as the main thing. Definitely. But we do have that stuff where we are showing different content on that screen based off of the execution of authorization policy. So this session is an absolute win. We've got some performance issues. We've got some definite performance issues. And I don't normally like to say go ahead and optimize for performance, but this is egregious. So I'm going to do a little bit of research this afternoon, and I'm going to look into better ways of, or I'm going to figure out what I'm doing wrong when it comes to storing the identity once we've collected the identity and figured out which colored bracelet that identity is wearing. And I want to store that on the browser side maybe, so that as they're walking through the club, we're not constantly pausing them every time they try to get to a different room in the club and having to ask for their identity and then checking against the list and saying, okay, yeah, no problem. I just want to have these entitlements, these roles indicated on their the wristband that they got from the bouncer at the door. So I'm gonna do that offline. My phone's almost out of battery, and it's what I'm using as a camera. And I will report back tomorrow morning with my findings and discovery. And hopefully, this experience will be a whole lot less freaking terrible. is the word that I would use. So great, Rev. Thanks for joining me and hanging out and stuff like that. I appreciate the company when you do make it, and I don't like to post in the Discords every time I start a stream because oh god, yeah, auth stuff is a pain, and it's one of those things where we deal with it as developers like once every couple of years, and by the time we come around to it again, it's all different again. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why I've gotten out of front end development as much as I possibly can, but I can't escape it because I'm the only developer on this project because it's my project. So yeah, I get to go through this pain, and it'll be fine for a while, and then it doesn't even make sense to try and build out some sort of helper framework or a cheat sheet with here's how you put it together, because it's going to be coded differently for every damn project you do. And by the time you come around to having to implement again, it's a whole new, here's the way you should implement it now. So yeah, that's annoying. But I'm going to get this figured out. I'll report back on it, and we'll do a short code review over the changes that I discovered that I needed to make. And then we'll carry on from there. So until tomorrow, friends, be kind to yourselves, take care of yourselves, eat good food, drink liquids that make your body and mind happy. And if there is grass nearby, go touch it. I'm that developer dad. I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. Thanks, Rev. I'll see you later, bud.